Hello, college English class. This is the first part of the true British lit. What I focus on is the Romantic era poets. I'm going to open up the lecture series here with Romantic era poets and characteristics. Some of these characteristics we're going to talk about now. Some we'll talk about in other lectures. I have assigned a worksheet. Make a copy of that worksheet. And after each lecture, after each day, I want you to answer. There's 3 questions about each topic. I would like you to answer those. Today, there's 2 topics. The first being the influence of the French Revolution. Now, you would think the French Revolution was a horrible thing. I know in history class, all the beheadings, the 3 revolutions, Robespierre, Napoleon the First, Napoleon, the Napoleonic Wars, the horrors that the failure of the French Revolution brought upon Europe. But in terms of British art, it's a lot different. The influence of the French Revolution was more about the ideas of the French Revolution and not the actual outcome of the revolution. So there's a famous quote by Robert Southey and this is part of the quote: "A few persons, but those who have lived in it, can conceive of or comprehend what the memory of the French Revolution was, nor what a visionary world seemed to open up to those who were just entering it. Old things seemed passing away, and nothing was dreamt of but the regeneration of the human race." This whole enlightenment idea of the freedom of man, and by men, that's extended to men and women, of humans, was so enticing that a whole era of artists took up that mantle and tried to create plays, novels, and poems that really embodied that. Not even the violence. So part of this here, not even the violence that came with Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars really watered down those ideas for the Romantic era poets. Now, for this, we have I know it's a Wikipedia. It's not a great link, and I apologize. But the Norton Anthology links that was using for the last 4 years have now been replaced by the Norton Bookshop. So I'm looking to replace those. So the next number 2 is the landscape. There's a lot of landscape poetry, a lot of pastoral, it's called, poetry. Poets saw that as not just for its own beauty, but as a way to get in touch with your own inner spirituality. I have a separate lecture about that. The Orient, Romantic Orientalism. You have recognizable elements of Asia and Africa that show up in their poetry, not just the art of the Orient, but some of the philosophical ideas of the Orient. This comes directly from British imperialism. Gothic, Frankenstein. Some of you might have read Frankenstein, Dracula, all of these kind of Gothic novels. It's not an invention of the Romantic era, but they really embrace this kind of imitation medievalism to create some what we would call now the horror novels. And the last one, you're going to do this. You're going to do 2 things in your worksheet today. Lord Byron, the Byronic hero. These are characters who embody both greatness of character and gigantic flaws. So these are people who they are great human beings, but they're also flawed. Lord Byron, he was the rock star of his day. He had to leave England. He broke laws. He married his cousin. and that was against the law in England. So he had to flee England or be arrested and live in Italy. In Italy, he was chased out of Italy because he was reported to have broken up many marriages. He wasn't a great guy. He wasn't a nice guy. He was a beautiful guy. He was a gigantic genius of a poet, but he had gigantic flaws. And part of what he wrote, and a lot of people who knew him wrote. As a matter of fact, the very first vampire novel ever written was based on Lord Byron as the vampire. That's what a great guy he was. Um, Satan is seen as one of the great characters in this Byronic hero. He will love none above God. A lot of the Byronic heroes are based on the medieval German writer Goethe. He wrote a famous play called Dr. Faust, Dr. Faust who sells his soul to Mephistopheles. Um, it's no surprise when you have a character, a real life character like Napoleon, who's both a gigantic hero and a gigantic villain. What I have here is an excerpt just from the opening of one of his plays, Manfred. Manfred is kind of based on Methuselah, the oldest man in the world, who's learned everything he can learn, but he wants more. So here's Manfred, right? Scene, Gothic gallery, time, midnight. Right, so hitting on some of the romantic ideas. So here's Manfred speaking. The lamp must be replenished. So here that means it's night. But even then it will not burn, so long as I must watch. My slumbers, if I slumbers, are not sleep, but a continuance of enduring thought. And when I can resist it not, in my heart there is a vigil, and these eyes but close, to look within, and yet I live and bear the aspect and form of breathing men. But grief should be the instructor of the wise. Sorrow is knowledge. They who know most must mourn deepest over the fatal truth. The tree of knowledge is not that of life. Here's this guy who's learned everything he can learn, and comes out in the play. He's learned everything that he can learn about science, about religion, about philosophy. So he's learned everything from the tree of knowledge, but he's going to die. So that's what it means here when he says the tree of knowledge is not that of life. What happens in the rest of the play, you can read this on your own. You'll read this on your own when you answer your questions about the Byronic hero. Um, he enslaves the spirits of the universe and asks for immortality. And this gigantic flaw, this want of immortal life, and this want of knowledge for himself, this selfishness, we're as as readers, we're both enthralled and appalled by these characters. We want to see them succeed, but even though we don't like them, that's Lord Byron. So yeah, I want you to click on this here. This one's a little longer than the Wikipedia for the Byronic hero here. I did try to find some good university type information and writing for this as best I could. So this is from Marquette. So read the excerpt from Manfred. Do the best you can with it. I'm not asking you to memorize it. Then answer the questions in the worksheet. When you come in tomorrow, I will answer any of your questions.